Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming to the show. Thank you for listening to us on Spotify, Apple, SiriusXM, or maybe you're checking us out right now on our presenting YouTube sponsor, Sports Talk Chicago. Thank you so much for coming into the episode. You can follow me at Joey Sports Guy. My guest today is a welcome return. It's June right now, so what better time to talk about the Mundelein Bears than Mark Carman himself? You can follow him at the Carm. He is CHGO's Carman, the center seat. My friend, how are you? Good to see you.
Joey, appreciate you having me as always. And yeah, Mundelein, Rockford, Naperville. Perhaps they'll leave the state. My dream is Chicago. People yell at me every single second when I bring it up. You can't, it's never going to happen. Okay, well, never say die. That's how I live my life. So yeah, it's a bizarre time in Bears Stadium life.
I get a chance to I try and watch as many shows as I can. You guys put out amazing, fantastic content. This last year has been so amazing. But my first question for you is it strange that you feel like you're kind of the lone man on an island where you want the Chicago Bears to actually stay in Chicago? Is that strange to you?
It is on one level, and then the other level is everybody, as you know, Joey, in this business, they like to be right. And if you say the Bears are going to be in Chicago, most likely, or you even want them to be in Chicago, you're going to be viewed as wrong and as an idiot. So it is kind of odd where it's like you have to fight. Like, wouldn't you rather watch the Bears in Chicago than in Arlington Heights? Wouldn't you rather be in the city? But then, if we're being honest about it, then all politics, it's not safe in Chicago and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, the city has its challenges. So does the world. So I'm extremely biased. I like to hang on to my childhood. I liked, going down to Wrigley Field when I was a kid. I loved going down to Chicago Stadium, Old Comiskey, and Old Soldier, and even New Soldier Field. So I just think the Bears, in my ideal world, belong in the city. I still obviously believe, if I had to bet, no pun intended, the podcast, but if I had to bet on it, I'd say they're going to be in Arlington Heights. But we'll see. There's a lot of tax issues that are popping up right now, and who knows how this thing's going to actually turn out.
Yeah, and it's June, and this is where kind of the business side of them moving to Arlington Heights comes into play, because we have leverage now. Now we have the one-lane downtown area of Naperville possibly getting into the mix, and that's just part of hooray, everyone. But I think you're bringing up a really great point. I do find it fascinating that I feel like I'm in my late 30s now. I live in a bit of an echo chamber, or maybe my own, where I don't mind being indoors now with indoor amenities, possibly for a Chicago Bears game in the middle of December. Bears weather doesn't mean quite as much to me, but I'm with you. I'll miss the rickshaw. I'll miss the experience. I'll miss the lakefront. And the fact that it's going to be kumbaya and the tailgating in Arlington Heights as opposed to Chicago Bears just doesn't seem like it's a false equivalency to me.
Yeah, and for the record, now, I could take out economic viability here for a second, but you want to put a dome on the lakefront in some revamped Bears stadium, I would live with that. And it is interesting, though. Like, as a younger adult, I would have held on to the Bears need to play outdoors. I probably held on to that as recently as 6 months ago. But now, would I like to go into a climate controlled in the middle of December? I'm not cold. I'm sitting there. I'm enjoying a football game. Let's not push back on that. That seems like an outstanding opportunity. So it isn't quote unquote bear weather anymore, but the Bears aren't necessarily going to be playing like the Bears of the 60s anymore either. So I'm okay. And the other thing, Dome Stadium, it's louder, which is a lot more fun. You actually have a real home field noise factor that the Bears really have never had.
No, and it's something that I want to embrace. I wish that they would figure it out in Chicago, but yeah, it's not getting off the bus running the football. It's getting off the private jet passing the football. Maybe now more is probably where we're at, right? And we have to we have to sort of live with that. Let's flip it over to the field. I mean, look, it's June 5th, but this is something that I think I think a lot of, Bears circles got really drilled into last offseason about what are we going to do about this offensive line. And I just really, really appreciated that you and I look, me and a very, very smaller audience. I think that at the beginning of the season, you said, hey, what is up with this defensive line? How are we going to stop anybody? And this offseason still has me scratching my head a little bit. So on a morning when Leonard Floyd signs with the Buffalo Bills team that wants to go to the Super Bowl, are you still holding out hope with this $32 million in cap space that the Bears are going to do something, or are they kicking the can down the road maybe one more offseason?
So I think what you just hit the nail on the head as far as they are kicking that edge rusher down the road. As far as a true impact guy, clearly at least one season. Hopefully they'll have it then. There's still some interesting names out there. Justin Houston, 34 years old, 17 quarterback hits last year, 9 sacks the year before, still productive, knows Ryan Poles, familiar with the system. But again, that's a stopgap guy who's also going to be playing around. I mean, is Jervon Dexter going to create holes from? Is Zach Pickens going to be creating holes from? It's going to be a steep climb for anybody coming in here. And Yannick Ngakoue is another name that people are talking about that makes sense. But they didn't prioritize it in the draft, and they prioritized protecting the quarterback, which I think, Joey, I mean, we'd agree, right? You got to get Fields to where he needs to get to, and then you can address the other side of the ball. But it does, when you start factoring in how many wins the Bears are going to have next year, that is still remains the number one concern. I have him, I was on Football Night in Chicago with David Haw, and he's asking the question, are they a playoff contender? Well, 7 teams make the playoffs in the NFC, man. The division's weak. I'm willing to say they'll be a playoff contender right now. And with the terrified part of they might not be able to stop anyone, and they could start the season awful slow as the offense starts to come together. And at that point, there'll be some angry Bears fans. The conversation will get pretty, I think, desperate fairly fast.
Yeah, last year you can definitely play the game, right? A Smith-Marset fumble, at the 50-yard line. Who knows? Maybe some of those L's turn into W's. I guess part of my fear a little bit, Mark, is that when you want to talk about the development of Justin Fields, I think we're thinking about those moments, though, right? I think we're thinking about a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, and the defense needs to get off the field somehow. Can they make that stop? If they don't make that stop, you eat up 2 more minutes out of a drive. Now Justin's maybe getting the ball back with 3:30 instead of 5:30, puts different complexion, puts Getsy in a different play calling mindset. It's stuff like that I worried about that kind of happened last year. And I felt like it wasn't helping Justin Fields' development, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. And also, look, he's got a number 1 wide receiver now. He's got hopefully a healthier Darnell Mooney for a whole season, although he's hasn't been out there quite yet, so that's a little bit terrifying. I would think that Chase Claypool is going to be a whole lot better this year than he was last year. It'd be almost impossible for him not to be, right? I mean, Robert Tonyan never he had 1 really decent season in Green Bay. How much does he help? I think a little, at least. Let's not get crazy about it. I think the offensive line should be better, right? Darnell Wright's going to have an impact. Second year of Braxton Jones. I don't have to run through this whole thing. So it'd be great if he had the perfect scenario, get the ball back, like you're saying early. The defense is giving you all sorts of opportunities. He doesn't have that part, but he should have, when he's on the field, at least a lot more just comfortable feeling, right? Weapon here, weapon there, protection here. I can actually stand. I understand the offense better. Second year with Getsy, he should be able to breathe and relax and settle into really the quarterback that he can be.
When it comes to Justin Fields right now in June, Mark, is cautiously optimistic the right way to put it? Are you full on optimistic? I mean, it's been an ebb and flow riding this wave a little bit, and I think Twitter has a lot to do with it. But where are you just right now with June with a couple months to go?
I would say confidently optimistic. Let's go there.
There was a glimmer in your eye when you said that, so I like that. Yeah.
I'm not saying he's going to be your traditional successful quarterback, but he ran for the 2nd most yards in the history of the NFL. He was the first quarterback to ever have 4 runs over 50 yards. I know I keep on saying the word run, but these are historic numbers that he put up on a very bad team. So I just think if you use logic, he's going to get better. The team around him is going to be better. So can he be middle of the road quarterback? That does not feel like a huge leap to me at this point.
We're here talking with Mark Carman of CHGO. I get that. Look, I do a lot of NFC North stuff. I'm sure you talk to a lot of, Lions fans, Packers fans, and we've got this running quarterback who can't pass. I mean, Mark, is it fair to push back on that when you have a quarterback that I kind of noticed after week 4, week 5, kind of realized, I mean, sure, some of it was out of necessity, but he could pick up 7 yards whenever he wanted to with his legs. And that eventually became 50 yards, 60 yards, and so on. Everyone says that it's hard to replicate, but the specter of that threat has to give him a bit of an advantage, correct? And that should help accelerate the passing game. I just don't think that's going away overnight. He's still wildly in his prime. I mean, I just think the possibility is there that we could see incremental progress in the passing game just by the nature of his running threat.
I agree with you. I mean, listen, once he gets to a point where he really understands what's going on, and he tried, like I've listened to him, Joey, in practice, like he's talked about after plays, like I try to move my eyes over there to deke him there and come back this way. Like the dude's a smart guy. I mean, nobody should be questioning Justin Fields' intelligence, which I don't actually hear a whole lot of that. So maybe I'm just bringing up something that doesn't need to be brought up. But my point in it is that once he's more comfortable, he could deke like he's going, and then he steps back and he's firing it, like and guys have to honor both sides, and all of a sudden, dudes are just running free, and it's a much easier throw than he's got to, rather than putting in some really tight window. It should all play in his favor. Get him out of the pocket. They're staring at him. What's he going to do? Where's he going to go? It's a lot to handle for a defense. And I think the more comfortable he gets and the more talent around him, we're just going to see more and more and more. I'm going to be really disappointed if it doesn't go that way, because that would just suck at this point.
Yeah, especially on paper, too, when you've got pre-snap motion and you can do Tyler Scott, Velus Jones, or Chase Claypool on these end arounds and kind of mix and match that and have people guessing, just to give him that 0.5 extra seconds to read the field. When we want to get into processing, giving him a chance might actually, be able to accomplish that. One more on the Bears real quick. So, as it stands right now, as you're looking at it, what is the strongest position group on the Chicago Bears, either side of the ball?
Great question. So when you look at the receiver room, if you just do the numbers, Claypool's had a high 800-yard season. Mooney's had a 1,000-yard season. DJ Moore's had 1,100-yard seasons. I mean, Justin Fields has never thrown for more than 2,200 yards. If you add that up, 11 plus call it 9, that's 22 plus another 1,000. That's 3,000 right there. You haven't thrown one ball to Cole Kmet or Robert Tonyan or anybody else out of the backfield. What is a realistic goal for him to get to? The over-under in Vegas, by the way, on his passing yards, I think is about 2,700. That's where it started out at, which feels like pound the over, right? I'm doing it like that. He's 50% better this year. Plus, I don't know. I've got him at 3,600 yards total, which I'm saying like he's going to throw for like 31, 32. And he's going to run for another 600. So 38, somewhere in the, I just did a realistic math breakdown of where I think he can be. I hope he's not going to run for 1,100 plus again. Let's go, a little over half there. Maybe it'll be more. Maybe he'll rush for 800, but he should be throwing with everything around him, over 3,000. Come on, let's go. But that's a huge leap too, from where he was at. But it's also like, so I'm asking you to throw for 200 a game. I mean, it's really not that much. So
Kyle Orton could do that. Come on.
Yeah. Now. Yeah. So I'm a long-winded answer. I think when you look at it, I would say I'm hoping that it proves out to be. And I think if you look logically at what they've accomplished at this point, it's the receiving room.
Yeah. And I'm wondering also, I'm sure there isn't a number out there, but if there was a number of what do you think Justin Fields' pass attempts over under would be a game?
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Because I think that's part of the stat that gets baked into that for sure. But let's move on really quick. I do want to get to some hoops for you, but we got a couple minutes. Let's do a 60-second check-in with our Chicago baseball teams. I think the Chicago Cubs, I'm curious, which one intrigues you more right now? The Chicago Cubs, the Chicago White Sox? Which one you feel like has any more life? Is there any hope? And because we got a long way to go with this thing. We still got over 100, 10-plus games.
Yeah, I'm not intrigued by the Cubs at all. I don't think they're good. And I'm really worried about Justin Steele. That's not a good development. And he's going to, going on the 15-day injured list. And, we're all hoping that it's not Tommy John. That would be a disaster of occurrence for Steele and for the Cubs this year. But I don't see it. I don't see it out of their bullpen. I don't see it in their lineup. I don't see it in their rotation. I don't. Whereas on the other side of town, like I can at least see some high-end talent, potential. Kopech pitched very well yesterday. Cease has had, he started out the season. It's been a little bit wonky, but like we've seen him at a very high level. Liam Hendricks coming back to the fold, pitching back-to-back days over this weekend, starting to look more like himself. And then I'm still intoxicated by Luis Robert and Yohan Moncada and that whole scene. Tim Anderson, I've been a huge TA guy, but you do start to wonder now if perhaps it might be time for him to be in another uniform that he's just kind of been here too long.
Can I ask you something really quick? Is Tim Anderson a second baseman?
I think at some point he will be. At some point he will be. But he made a great play on the hole the other day that kept the ball game tied. He's certainly not the best shortstop in baseball, but I'd call him. He's middle of the road, right? But does TA playing second base at some point here as his legs start to slow down a little bit more, and the hands have been good but never elite? That probably makes a whole lot of sense too. Yeah.
It's just kind of hard to kind of wrap your head around. I mean, the Cubs, unfortunately, it's a little bit of they are who we thought they were. You know what I mean? If the opposition scores 4 runs, they're in a ton of trouble. If they need a 3-run home run, they're in a ton of trouble, and their bullpen's kind of a mess. And the Chicago White Sox, it feels a lot like last year, though, right, Mark? I mean, like I remember last year was like they'd kind of win 3 in a row. You'd be like, okay, or they'd win 4 out of 6, and maybe they'd get back to 500, and you're like, all right, is this a run coming? And then they kind of take that step backwards, and now obviously they got the Yankees coming into town. So, tough to say.
It's definitely similar to last year, minus the Tony La Russa factor. By the way, that's Kevin Wells in the background here joining our show. I hope that doesn't.
It's all right. I did legal face off with him with WGN back in the day. So I don't know.
There we go.
Remember me or not, but he's a good man. I like Kevin Wells a lot. Last topic. This one I'm really excited about, Mark. I want to talk to you about Scottie Pippen. This news is a little bit older, but still is kind of rattling around in my mind. I immediately kind of thought of you because I consider both of us to be, what do you want to call it, Jordanites?
Sure.
On the 7th day we rest because the first 6 days we won titles. So where are you? How do you feel about this whole Scottie mess? I think maybe more emotionally as a Chicago Bulls fan. Where are you with Scottie?
Right. So let me shout out a couple of people because, I've got my tons of my own thoughts on this. But I want to shout out Mark Grody at The Score, who said it first, that it's like sports heartbreak. And it is. I would have a huge smile on my face when there was one video. I think Jordan was at a game in Miami, and Pippen shows up in the box and surprises him, and Jordan jumps up and he's so happy to see him and he gives him a big hug. I got off on that stuff. I loved those two being friends. And so for this to happen, it's just so unbelievably disappointing. And shout out to Stephen A, who did a 21-minute rant on this that I thought was fantastic. And I don't even know if he touched this subject, but this, when it comes to Scottie Pippen, at the end of the day, is not surprising. He has always been a wild card. He could do something at any moment that you absolutely couldn't believe, such as the 1.8, which is his all-time worst, of sound mind and body. I ain't going in because you just called the play for Tony Kukoc. When Scottie Pippen should have damn well known at that point in time that his best quality was rebounding, pushing the ball, being a good offensive player, but not being the last shot guy. Was never you. It doesn't matter that Jordan was there. You were not that dude. And Tony had a bunch of game-winning shots that year. So he should have known, but he walked off the court, which was unbelievable at the time. And then the other ones, that jump out, right? His last year, 98, not going to have surgery, going to get it late. Jordan mentions it, but Scottie was wrong about that. Yeah, Scottie was wrong about that. But of course, it hurts his feelings now because the guy can't own anything that he does. And then, before that, it's Game 7, it's the Pistons, whatever, guy gets a migraine. It's hard to go at somebody on that, but it's like biggest game of the year. Scottie going to be there? Oh, no, not going to be there. He's got a migraine.
Well, and if you remember too, in '89, he got popped by Lambeer in the first minute of the game in Game 7, and left. And look, he, whatever. Yeah. We're not here to litigate injuries, but it's another kind of moment of him not being.
Yeah, and I don't want to try to tear down the whole player because Scottie was phenomenal. I would take Scottie Pippen on my basketball team any day of the week, even with everything we just named. Dude was a unicorn. Was he a better defender than Jordan? A lot of people would say yes. I wouldn't, but some people do. And he actually has an argument because he was longer. And I mean, supremely talented on that side. But it's just like, dude, Jordan got up in his Hall of Fame speech and spoke truths about his career the whole time. And in it, he started with you and said that he never had won a championship without Scottie Pippen. Every time you saw me, you saw Scottie Pippen. Dude, how is that not for life? Yeah. What? And maybe, you know, there's speculation. I think it makes sense, too, that it's getting uglier now because it's the son's dating the ex-wife or whatever the hell's going on there. But it's all started with The Last Dance. And he didn't like how he was portrayed. And I thought he was portrayed completely fine.
I do too, but here's the thing, Mark. I've been thinking about this a ton, right? Because what you're talking about, right, is Scottie seems to have a hard time with the way we, as you mentioned, mythologize Michael Jordan. So Scottie, be very, very careful how we mythologize you too as well, because I'm with you, man. I remember the series turning when Scottie was put on Magic, or it was like, let's put Pippen on Mark Jackson, right? And that changes. Sure. That's what I remember. But then I start like, be careful what you wish for, because then when you go back and start looking at stuff, you know, it doesn't look that great for Scottie, right? Like, you know, you've got the migraine game. He shoots 1 for 10, 2 points. I wrote all this down, of course. 94 against the Knicks when he doesn't have Jordan. Shoots 40% from the field on 18.7 shots a game, right? Only 5.5 assists. So this whole like leader thing, this team aspect, I'm not really buying that one. 95 in game 5, they lose. He shoots 1 of 6 of free throws, especially in the late stage of the game. He misses those things. You know, 96, 34% from the field, 97, 42, and then 98, of course, he shoots 6 for 23 in the last 2 games because obviously his back was hurt. So it's like, Scottie, be super careful. And here's my theory, Mark, and I want to get your take on this, is in The Last Dance, I just rewatched it really recently. And you see in the first couple of episodes, they go into Scottie's backstory, and Scottie is built up properly as this running 2-man team, and they go towards the title. But I think what happens is, and I forget about this, in the clinching game versus the Lakers, when they won their first title, Scottie was amazing. Scottie scored 32, 13, 7 assists, 5 steals in the clinching game. And in Last Dance, who do they feature in that game? And this is fair because John Paxson didn't miss a shot, but they feature John Paxson. And I'm trying to get inside the head of Scottie and asking myself the question, is this when Scottie maybe at the point of Last Dance goes, you know, WTF, man, like, what is this? I had the game of my life, and it maybe all starts to spiral from there. I don't think it was maybe the thing as a whole. I just felt like these little moments where maybe he's sitting there being like, okay, this is where maybe I get that feature. Maybe that's where I get this, you know, I get a little bit of shine. But again, they also pay a lot of attention to the migraine game. You know what I mean? And it goes back and forth. And I always just kind of worry. I'm with you, though. I think The Last Dance really affected Scottie in a really just in an unfortunate way, because this is how he feels now.
Well, there was one, like, if I'm going to do a Last Dance breakdown on what happened there, because nobody's really, you make a great point about game 5. I didn't realize his numbers were that good, and that's phenomenal. And he was phenomenal in the whole series. And I at that point in time, I was like, really, Scottie Pippen's on the dream team? And he went on the dream team. He was one of the best damn players on the dream team. So I was sleeping on how good the good dude was at that point. But not for long after that. Like, I got it. Like, you're insane, and you're guarding Magic, and you're doing all these things, and you're just on a completely different level than he was. And he was reliable for the most part. During that stage. And when Michael retired, he was fantastic. But he also, you're naming numbers. In game 7 against the Knicks, scored 2 points in the fourth quarter, didn't shoot well. It wasn't just the fact that, the game 3 thing where he sits out. He also didn't come through down the stretch in game 7. But, sorry, back to The Last Dance. There's a moment there where the migraine comes up, and so in the game 7, Scottie got a migraine, which I was like, yeah. Like, it was, he showed that he didn't really buy it. Like, had to be like these little moments where these digs that came in that Pip was like, he had to be like, fuck you, dude, basically.
Yeah. Like, there's stuff that we don't see. That's kind of what I'm getting at in the way that it's cut. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So Was he right to have beef with Michael? Maybe, but dude, call up your guy, work it out, and don't burn that bridge.
And why don't you find a game 6 or game 7, Scottie, or game 5, where you're the reason, you know what I mean? Like the team won the titles. Well, guess what? You're not winning those last couple games without Mike. Let's be honest. This is easy. This is academic.
Right. And everybody's like, oh, 94, they won 55 games. And 93 with Jordan, they won 57. They lost. They lost in the second round. Of course they lost.
To Hugh Hollins.
Yeah. And they got screwed. But dude, Mike's not losing that series. And that team, with Jordan might have been their best team ever, really. You had a young coach who was emerging. You had Pippen and Grant as seasoned and in their prime as ever. BJ was probably playing as good a basketball. Yeah. I mean, no, he wasn't. And BJ in the Knicks series, he had some huge games. So I mean, that team might have been better than the '96 team if you throw Tony in there as well. Actually, and I am biased towards the younger Bulls over the older Bulls because Michael was that much better when he was younger. Although when you talk to him, he loves his mind and body and everything coming together and just being able to win the game with his head as much as the physical. Which, but as a fan watching, like, I'm sorry, dude, 91 Jordan versus 98 Jordan, 91's killing 98. You are not messing with that dude. I don't care how much you got in your head about what's going on. 91 would absolutely kill you, and so would 90, and so would 89. That dude was a complete utter lunatic. And you were smart, you were brilliant, you were phenomenal, you were Michael Jordan, but you weren't that Jordan.
No, yeah, and a year or two removed from Defensive Player of the Year on top of that, too. Just the
right.
Of the thing. And shout out to Pete Myers, a guy who I went to many of his basketball camp growing up. Mark, we got to get you out of here, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here on Believe in Bears. CHGO's Mark Carman. You can follow him at the Carm. Look, plug what you want to plug, please. There's so many people that they're checking out the show, man. I really love the content, man. You guys do such a great job, and always looking forward to more.
Hey, man, it's always a pleasure to be here, Joey. CHGO Bears, for people that are interested, we do it live at noon every day, noon Central Time. And yeah, sure, at the Carm on Twitter, the Carm23 on Insta, although I can't stand Instagram. That's not true. I just don't use it enough. So
it's going down. It's fading. It's fading.
Yeah, right. But if you can subscribe to CHGO and check out the show in addition to what Joey's doing here, we greatly appreciate it. So thanks, brother.
Thanks so much for coming on, checking out all the content with the Grays Lake Bears. Bring a Coca-Cola down to the stadium, and you'll get free in to Six Flags and also down to Grays Lake. Thank you so much for checking out this show, listening to us on Sirius XM, Spotify, Apple TV, or checking us out on YouTube right now on Sports Talk Chicago. We'll be back with more. Be well, be safe. Please be good to each other, and remember, you got to always bear down, even in June. See ya.